Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Haley Panagakis with Connect, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us for How to Turn Your General Session into a Polished Production with Scott Frankel. Before we get started, I want to give you a few housekeeping notes on the platform. You'll notice that this is a newer platform if you didn't join our last session. You can type your questions in for Scott in the Q&A box on the right-hand side of your screen. That's going to go directly to us, the presenters. And then if you want to use that other chat box, I see some of you are using it already, you can submit questions there as well or interact with the other attendees. We would love that. A recorded version of this session will be available on demand on our websites, where you can find additional on-demand webinars for any of you needing those last-minute credit hours before CMP testing. Yes, you are able to watch our sessions on demand and still receive credits. I get that question all the time, and it is available. For everyone joining us live today, that's all of you watching right now, we'll be sending out an email tomorrow evening with your certificate of attendance, so be on the lookout for that. For any of you future viewers, that's any of you not watching on May 30th, that you're watching this session on demand, so please email me directly at hpanagakis@connectmeetings.com to receive your certificate. It's not going to come to you automatically. I'll share more information about our upcoming webinars at the end of the program, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Before I introduce Scott, I'd like to welcome my coworker, Kristen Francis, who is hosted by our director here at Connect, and she's here to share a little bit about the many events we have going on and the education opportunities we have going on this year. So welcome, Kristen.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on the webinar today. We're very excited for the events that we have planned for this year. We've had some great events thus far, and we're looking forward to our next few events. So to highlight, we currently have registration open for Connect New England, which will be happening June 28th through the 29th. Today is the deadline, so if you would like to participate in that event and you are based in the New England area, please contact me. I'll make sure that Haley shares with you my email address so that you can contact me to get registered for that event. Again, all of our events are hosted by our events, meaning that if you qualify as a meeting professional, we would cover your hotel, travel, and meals during the course of the conference. So I also, of course, would like to highlight Connect. That will be happening this August from the 21st through the 23rd. We're super excited for that event. We would love to have you in attendance. You would be amongst over 1,000 of your fellow meeting professionals. So we really would like to attract all of the most active meeting professionals out there in all market segments. That would be association, specialty, and corporate. Registration is currently open. However, spots are filling up very fast. So that being said, register as soon as possible. If you have any colleagues who may also have an interest in joining us, make sure they register as soon as possible. And again, that's in New Orleans, Louisiana, August 21st to the 23rd. I hope that you enjoyed today's session, and this is just a glimpse of the type of education that we will be offering at Connect. So see you soon.
Thank you, Kristen, and we hope that all of you will join us at any of our events this year. We'd love to have you. Now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Scott Frankel. Scott Frankel is president of Animatic Media, a full-service production company and a leader and speaker at many industry events. Frankel founded Animatic in 1996 with the idea of offering agency-style service without the agency price tag. Scott and his team have produced thousands of events for clients of all sizes, from Fortune 500 conferences with thousands of attendees to smaller roadshows. Scott insists on perfection and is an innovator in the event technology business. In 2010, he started Conference On Demand, a leading platform for on-demand conference video, and recently launched meetingleader.com, a content management, web registration, and audience response web platform for corporate event planners. Now I'm going to hand it over to Scott. Scott, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, and thank you to everybody who tuned in today for this webcast. I do hope you find it, that you'll learn some things from it and be able to benefit. So I am just going to, Haley gave me a great introduction, so I'm not going to really spend a whole lot of time talking too much about Animatic, but I will tell you that A lot of the things that we've developed over the years came out of, client requests to offer better service, more focused attention to what their needs might be for both them as show management and to make the experience better for their clients. We do at Animatic have different aspects to our company. We are a full-service production company for events and conferences. We basically focus mostly on corporate events and conferences, as I mentioned. We also are very we're a full-service video production company. So we could do, shooting, taping, editing, and some of that will play into some of the things I'll share with you today for ideas of content that you could have created to polish your general sessions as well. And one of the things that I will always encourage every planner professional to do is to think out of the box, to always challenge your AV vendors and partners to how can we do things a little bit differently and better and so on. Now there are, as Haley mentioned, we do have 3 brands, and I'm just going to quickly, I already talked about Animatic Media. Conference on Demand is, again, something that came out of client requests for on-demand video after events. So where we would record, general sessions and also sometimes slide recordings and marry them together. But that's not something that we're really here to talk about today. But meetingleader.com is something that I'll touch at towards the end. And I'm not going to touch on it for any purpose of you using Meeting Leader specifically, but there will be some things that you hopefully can take away from what Meeting Leader does for your own best practices, and you could create your own methods to accomplish some of the things for content management and so on. So we're here to talk about your general session and how to make a production out of it. Because the fact of the matter is you've got your audio visual, you've got lighting, audio, and video equipment. And that's the core of the technology in the room. But how you use that and how you prepare for it and how you execute it all plays into making it a polished production. You can have 500, 1,000, 2,000 people in a general session room, and we've all seen it where things get a little uncomfortable for whatever reason because things aren't going as scheduled. So it's really the preparation and how you put things together and plan for it. So the devil is in the details. That is without a doubt one of the things that I will tell you is I find myself and my staff are always thinking, even in off hours, unfortunately, about the details of what could possibly go wrong or what could we do a little bit better. And the more you start thinking about those types of things, I think you'll find your own methods for improvement and how you can make things even smoother and so on. I'm going to be giving you some very specific feedback on what you can do and how to do it. I am seeing I'm trying to get the sound a little bit better. I think I'm seeing some feedback. I don't know if this is helping at all. Does this help any? Okay. So I'm hearing that it's a little bit better now. So planning, again, think about every aspect of what you're doing and how you want to do it. And you can't spend too much time on this. We're gonna talk about the proper equipment for the room and how to work with your AV partners on it and so on. And very key to it is having a competent staff. And there's certain positions that it's going to be more important than maybe other positions, but it is critical to know who you're bringing on board, meet with them, and give them a level of confidence in what's going to be happening. Because what you want to have is that perfect execution. You want to have that microphone on from the second your speaker hits the stage. And you want to have every screen as perfect as it could be as they go, from one element of the event to the other. Now, the good news here about this is it doesn't need to be expensive to do. You just have to have a plan of action. And, to do that, what you're going to do is you're going to build a run of show. And I'm going to talk a lot about a run of show because what a run of show really is, it's your cue-to-cue list of show elements from before the doors even open to your general session right until the time that the audience is going to walk out to go into the next session in the conference. I'm going to show you what a run of show looks like or can look like. There is no right or wrong way to do this as long as you're covering all of the elements. But before I actually show you the run of show, I'm going to take you through some of the elements so they'll make more sense to you when you see it in the list form. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, and I'm almost taking you through in a chronological order, is think about what's going to be on the screens before the doors open. And there's a variety of things that there might be on the screen. We call that walk-in content. And you have to have a plan for this because I've been on events back in the early days where I was hired basically to be support and not in charge of the production. It was amazing to me. People don't think through those things, and they were just, we'll just throw a logo up. And that's fine, and that might be all that you need or all that's required. But there are a lot of different types of walk-in content that you could put on the screen that's going to help polish things up. And obviously you need to discuss this with your internal clients and your external clients of what's going to work for them. But just to talk about what some of those elements might be, you might have things like agenda wallpaper. And you could do that a lot of different ways. It could be a loop of wallpaper that you put together in a PowerPoint that shows today's schedule, tomorrow's schedule, and the next day. And then you want to think through little things like maybe on day 2 you've eliminated day 1 from it, not to show them. Those are the little things. If you're in day 2 of a conference and you're still looking through the agenda from day 1, then that could have been done a little bit better. But that's just one example. Social media feeds are very big for walk-in content. You could put up a hashtag and throw a social media wall up, or maybe some Twitter feeds. And most of the software that allows you to do that, a lot of your audiovisual partners or your production companies, they will already have the software to do that. And that comes all the way with, by itself, that'll come with approval control panels and so on, so you're only putting up content that you've approved. You can put up photo montages. If it's day 2 of a conference, for instance, maybe you put up, if there was a party the night before or just some pictures from the night before, you can put up a photo montage from previous sessions or activities. And then another thing that you could do is sponsor commercials. And again, I don't really know who's listening or attending the webcast, but it may or may not be your responsibility to delve into something like that. But you could certainly be a hero to your organization or your client if you even come up with that idea that maybe you could sell and create revenue from showing a sponsor commercial, 1-minute commercial maybe while the room's being seated. Or maybe you do something that's a little more fun, like a trivia contest and so on. And what you'll be able to do at that point is maybe the trivia is sponsored by a company and put a logo up there. Just, again, you have to think through what kind of walk-in content that you can have there. Moving on to the music. I take the music very seriously for the general session room in terms of you want to have a purpose to the music that's playing. You want something, I always want something that's going to be high energy. I find myself, if I'm the show caller, always telling my audio engineer to, make it louder, because I want lots of good energy. And you could go through this. Now, it could be the type of meeting where it's just not called for. It could be an internal, it could be an investors meeting or a medical conference or something where you don't want that, or an awards gala. But it could be a themed event also. And maybe for a themed event, you're going to want to pick and choose some very specific music. And you can use a lot of different ways. We used to download those things and burn the CDs with music. And these days, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but people are using more and more. They're using Spotify and Pandora and iTunes to create playlists. One thing I'll definitely want to tell you you'll have to do if you're doing Spotify or Pandora is you're going to have to buy a more of a premium package for it to eliminate the commercials. But there also could be some negatives to using these unless you're creating a specific playlist, because what you could find if you're just doing a radio station that you've created, you could find a song with explicit lyrics or something that is making its way in. What we do at Animatic, we actually have a couple of PC tablets, and they're dedicated for audio for us. And on those tablets, we have Spotify loaded with our premium accounts on there, along with some other software that will allow you to do audio playback. Back in the day, and it's still out there, it's called an instant replay, which is a bunch of audio cues that would be pre-programmed, and your audio engineer would basically, hit a button and instantaneously play a track. It could be a stinger track, a music stinger to play somebody on or play somebody off. It could be a lot of different things, but one of the things that you're going to want to make sure that we recommend is that you're doing a voice of God. So your introductions are pre-recorded and not live reads. And I'm going to talk more about that in just a minute as well. We talk about play-ons and play-offs. So when somebody's called to this stage, if it's a speaker transition, nothing can suck the energy out of a room like dead air. And you cannot always count on applause to fill the gap between presenters. You can get a lot of awkward silence there. So when you're going to pick an audio track, and this could be popular music, or there's plenty of copyright-free music that you can use, licensed music that you could use to play people on and off, just as a stinger till they get to the stage and then bring it down. One of the things I don't want to forget to mention to you about music, if you're using Spotify or Pandora or however you're downloading the music and so on, you're going to need to license that music. And you can do that through ASCAP, which is the American Society of Composers and Publishers. You could do it through BMI. And basically, it's not a difficult thing. To take the mystery out of it, you could create an account with one of these organizations. And generally speaking, unless you're doing some very significantly sized events, you could generally fill out a quarterly report, and you put in that report what events you've done, how many people there were, and quite typically probably pay the minimum fee, which is not a whole lot of money. It's roughly $100, give or take, to license that music. Because it is your responsibility, not your client's responsibility. Whoever is producing that session, that's their responsibility to license it. Going on about a couple of other things I just want to mention here before we move on. in the run of show. I don't think it's actually, I have a slide for it, but it's not a big deal. But it's recording. You're going to want to make sure you make a cue in your run of show to start recording. If you're recording video recording or slide recording, it's one of those things that it's very easy to overlook it. You've got the right equipment there, and you've got all the good intentions in the world, but what you're going to want to do is make sure you start to record. Just to repeat about the music licensing, it's ASCAP, A-S-C-A-P, or BMI. So we're going to move on here now. Okay, some more run of show elements here. Things like that you may have in terms of things that can happen on the stage. You might have entertainment. And depending on the entertainment you have in a session, it could be something very simple, or if it's a more complex act, you may need to create a subsection of cues just for the entertainment. But if it's really, let's say it's a stand-up comedian, you're just going to obviously have to put a cue in to play the music or the voice of God to introduce them and turn on the right microphone. But it's things that needs to be taken into consideration. I'm going to delve a little bit deeper into voice of gods because you will find there is a difference of opinion with different production companies and producers about it. As I mentioned, we like to record them ahead of time. We like to have them professionally recorded. It does not cost a whole lot of money to do, but you don't want to leave it to chance that somebody may mispronounce a name or a title, or there could be an error. So if you have the list of presenters ahead of time, what we like to do, have them recorded, and it's just very simple. It's, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the CEO of ABC Company, Jane Doe. And what we'll do is we'll do a couple of things with it. We'll bring those Voice of God tracks. Obviously, we'll have the client approve them to make sure we have pronunciation correct. But we'll bring those, the raw files with just the Voice of Gods, and then we'll pre-edit music into them. So there's a little stinger at the front end of 6 or 8 seconds of music to catch everybody's attention. The music dips down, the Voice of God plays, and then the music comes up, and your audio engineer will play that until the point that the presenter gets to the stage and starts speaking. Again, it's just one of those things that will polish the general session, how it looks, how it feels. And you might even, depending on the event, you could have them recorded in multiple languages. One of the other things that we'll do is we will take that music track. I like to brand an event. I like to brand music to an event. But again, that's just my opinion. So I like to use the same track for every Voice of God introduction. And what I'll do is I will bring that music track by itself. And the reason I'll do that is because there are changes. We know inevitably people will have to drop off and change, or maybe a presenter will not show up. And we'll still be able to, it may not be the same voice, but we'll be able to do a live read of that same Voice of God track that needs to be read with the same music underneath it. But again, other people will contest that they rather mix it up and have different music each time. There's no right or wrong. It all depends what you want to do. Other types of things that would be in the run of show and should be accounted for are transition slides. And as an example, if you're looping, if you're in some sort of a looping screen for your walk-in, taking you to the top of the show. So you're in some type of a looping, agenda or animation or sponsor loop, whatever you want to call it. you're going to want to transition to a transition screen. And that could be a lot of different things. That could usually, for me, that will be the conference logo or a welcome screen for the conference. And the reason we do that is because if we're going from the walk-in loop and then we're going to play the voice of God to introduce the first presenter, I don't want to have, by chance, a logo, a sponsor logo up on the screen when I'm inviting Jane Doe from ABC Company up. So you're going to want to think about transition screens. And the same goes between sessions. And the same goes if you've got a session introducer who comes up to this stage, does a little biography, introduces the main speaker. You're going to want to have this transition screen accounted for. It's also what we talk about as an oh shoot screen. I don't know what the rating of this webcast is, so I went with oh shoot. And that's for the purpose, a lot of things could go wrong. It is a live production, and even with the best planning, there could be a technical issue. It can be just a wrong cue, or something could have went wrong. Somebody could realize it was a typo. And it's always better to put up the conference logo. It's a safe screen until you get re-queued to the correct content that you're going to put up. But you want to think through your transition screens for every session. Another thing that you want to account for is IMAG. And again, without knowing the level of expertise of our attendees here, I don't mean to insult anybody, but I will explain. IMAG is basically image magnification, which is another term for cameras in the room that you're going to put up to screen. We've all seen it. So if you're going to have cameras in the general session room, you want to account for exactly what's going to happen with the cameras. Sometimes you might be recording, sometimes you might be putting them to screen, or both. And this needs to be discussed in detail. And you're going to want to have this discussion with both your technical director, who's usually the one who's calling the cameras, and also the camera operators. You're not going to want to leave it to chance that the camera operators know what you want. You want a separate meeting, talk about the type of shots. You know, if it's a general session where you just have a keynote up on stage, most of the time a professional camera operator is going to know your basic shots, but it could be demos that are being up, some sort of product demos or something a little more elaborate. You're going to want to account for that as well. Okay, so lower thirds, because I was talking about cameras, we're going to talk about lower thirds now. Again, this is something that you've all seen, you see it on TV every day. Lower thirds are basically when we superimpose a name and title of a presenter who's up on the stage. Again, it does not have to be expensive. If you're working with a company, an AV partner, or somebody on your technical staff who's telling you this is a big deal, it's not, and I would challenge them on that. This could be done in PowerPoint. There used to be special equipment years ago, things like chyrons that needed to be brought in. This could be done through PowerPoint, and most of today's switchers will have the ability to do lower thirds out of PowerPoint in two ways. What I'm showing you is what we would call a keyed, and you've seen this too. This is like when you see blue screen or green screen in movie effects. And what we're doing here is we've created this lower third with Dave Williams' name, and the background that you don't see is a bright green. And what the switcher that you have in your, to switch between your sources for different computers and camera, in this case, the switcher had the ability to key out the green, leaving only the lower third. And you could also add in PowerPoint transitions for wipes and dissolves, and they can dissolve in and dissolve out, or fly in and fly out. And the second way to do them in PowerPoint would be if you literally do a lower third that is taking up the entire lower third of the screen as an overlay. And in the switcher, in this case, they would have the ability to wipe out everything in the top 2/3, showing the camera behind it and the lower third in front of it. But again, this is the type of thing that just helps to polish up your general session. Okay, so one of the next things, and this is something that is also somewhat debatable, but I feel very strongly about it. When you've got video that has to play in your general session room, the big question is to embed the video or not to embed the video in PowerPoint. And I will admit, there has been times in the past where embedding the video has been a challenge or problematic. But quite frankly, these days, PowerPoint's come a long way where embedding video is not a problem. It plays pretty well. The hardware is usually very capable of running back video in PowerPoint. But you are going to want to discuss it with your audiovisual team to see their comfort level in it. Because if you don't embed the video in there, you're going to need a playback machine for video. And I'm Mr. Backup. So if I'm going to have a playback machine for video, I'm going to have 2 playback machines for video because I'm going to have a backup. And again, that just might add to the cost there. But, you know, as I mentioned, most of the computers today can handle it. Now, if you are embedding the video in PowerPoint, you're going to want to make sure 2 things are programmed. And they're very simple. They're in the playback settings for the video when you click on the video file after bringing it into PowerPoint. You're going to want to select play automatically, so not on click, and you're going to want to select the box to play it full screen. And that's important, not just the full screen for obvious reasons, but to play automatically. Because I've seen presenters come in and they're going to want you in the front of house or somebody on your technical staff when they get to that slide to click play. And again, from the aspect of a polished production, what you want to have is you want the presenter, when he's ready to run the video, to click his slide advancer, get to that slide, and run the video. Otherwise, you're going to be relying on verbal cues. And that can be a problem because depending on the level of the expertise of your presenter, they may forget to give you the verbal cue, you know, and that could be something simple. Let's take a look at a video. But if they forget that, the timing could be wrong, and you don't want to play a video before a cue, or you don't want to sit there not playing a video and the presenter's expecting one. So again, I think I've driven that point home. Have it embedded if you can, have it played back. You do want to test it ahead of time. We all request all of the presentations to come to us before we ever get on site. But as I mentioned, that's a request. I am a realist. It does not happen as often as we like. But I'd rather get a version of the PowerPoint and the video file, even if we're embedding it, so we can test it and make sure that it plays in PowerPoint and looks good. We will also, most of the time, bring our, we bring show machines. You know, we've got a bunch of machines that we bring that are all up to date with the latest version of Office. And we're using Office 365. And just a little tip on that. If you're responsible for the playback machines, you're going to want to make sure, especially if you're using Office 365, that you boot those machines up once a month if they're not always out, continually being used on show, because you'll want to connect those to the internet to make sure that it reactivates the license every month. It's a requirement of Office 365. You can do it on site, but we all know that we've had those issues on site in terms of spotty Wi-Fi and so on. But we like to get the files ahead of time, test them. Even if they bring an update, it's better to know that the files are going to run for you. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the perfect cue, which to me is one of the most, believe it or not, it's a simple device, but if used properly, it's one of the most important things to having a polished general session. So this is your slide advancer. But this is the weapon in your arsenal that is critical to me. I have it on every one of my general sessions. But there's a couple of things that you're going to need to know about it. Now, first of all, why do I like it so much? It works 100% of the time. If there's an issue with it, you'll know when you get there and you set up if the batteries are low or if there's a problem with it. But the remote, as you can see in the slide, this is actually the more advanced remote. They make two of them. The remote that's being held in the hand, the one I like has two buttons. A big green one for forward and a little red one for backwards for the slides. The one you're looking at is a little more advanced. It has a button to black out the screen. If the presenter chooses to black out the screen to give you, force your attention to what they're saying. And it also has a laser pointer. I prefer the one with two buttons. And trust me when I tell you, I've given this to executives for major companies who look at it and are still stumped. Which is the forward button? But it's a great device. But here's a couple of tips and tricks about the Perfect Cue. It has the ability to control two or more machines. The basic Perfect Cue can control up to two laptops simultaneously. And the key there is you're going to want to talk to your AV provider and partner, wherever is giving you the Perfect Cue, to advance the slides. And make sure not only are they giving you the Perfect Cue that can control two laptops, but you're going to want to make sure that they have both USB cables there to do it. And there's a couple of ways to use it. Again, as I mentioned, I love backups. So if it's in its most simple format, you could have two laptops with the same PowerPoint loaded, and when the presenter clicks to advance the slide, both laptops will advance simultaneously. And the benefit there is that they're going to be able to give you a backup. Should one machine fail, or should one machine lag a little bit, you can just tell your technical director to switch to the second machine, and you'll be good to go. That's in its most easy function, simplest function. Another way is on the Perfect Cue receiver, which is the big box there with the big giant green and big red buttons. Those light up for you just so you can have a sense of what the presenter is doing going forwards and backwards. There's an A and a B button. And it's just simple. You press A, it turns on. You press B, it turns on. Press it again, they turn off. And I use this all the time to cue back-to-back presentations. So when you have two PowerPoints back-to-back, and you can have both of them cued, ready to go. You can have the first presentation, and you can turn on the A button only, have a presenter go through their presentation. When they finish their presentation, instruct them to put the remote either on the podium or hand it off to a moderator or hand it off to the next presenter directly. And then at the control table, your show caller only needs to turn the A off and turn the B on, and you are ready to go back to back as quickly as they are, having them cued and ready to go. It's also, they actually have the ability, by the way, to have this, they have a device that they can add in to do up to 4 computers simultaneously. And that's great for shows if you're doing a multi-screen show. If you're doing a show where you've got, let's say, 3 screens, I'll keep it simple, and the outside screens are going to be mirrored, but the middle screen is going to have, let's say, a complementary PowerPoint, imagery, eye candy, whatever you want to call it. So you could have 2 different presentations simultaneously advanced to give a little more of what we, multimedia feel to the presentation on one mouse click. And the last thing I just want to mention about it, a lot of presenters are used to saying, well, I don't want to advance my own slides. I'll click the remote, but I want you to advance the slides. Nonsense. I may yes them to death. I'll try to convince them. The perfect queue will advance the slides 100% of the time. Let them do it at their pace, because otherwise what's going to happen, if they insist on you advancing the slides, or whoever on your team is going to be responsible for that, you're going to have to sit there like Pavlov's dog, watching for that green arrow the entire session, and then advance the slide. There's no reason not to. As I mentioned, the perfect queue works pretty much 100% of the time. So, as I finish up here on the elements, I'm going to talk about, the personnel that will be in your run of show. Everybody in your general session room is critical. Every single person and you're only as strong as your weakest link, like most things. So you're going to have your video engineer who's going to be switching your video, your TD. You're going to have your audio lead. You're going to have your lighting designer. Everybody needs to be on the same page. Everybody needs to know what the cues are, and that's where the run of show comes in handy. And I'm going to show you a sample of what my run of show generally looks like. So you're free to obviously take anything from this that you want to, use it, make it your own. But if you go along the top line there, you're going to see the time, the room. The reason I put the room in, even though we're talking about general sessions, a lot of time I will prepare or run a show for the entire conference, because it's easier sometimes for me to take the agenda and go through the entire agenda, create this once, and then through sorting in Excel, creating just a run of show for the general session room. So you've got the room, the session title, the speaker's name, the stage setup. What's on the stage? Is there a podium on the stage? Are there chairs? Is there a panel table? The Voice of God track number. As I mentioned, there's Voice of God's, and I have them pre-recorded, so we have the track number. What the Voice of God says, that's just a little verification, so you know which the Voice of God is supposed to be. The speaker timer. That's another thing I'll talk about in a second. How much time are we putting on the clock for the speaker? The main screen, what's going to be on the screens. And I usually put the file name there. And I'm going to talk about file naming in a couple of minutes. But what I want to show you here is, if you look at line 6 here, you'll see the PowerPoint is called Tuesday 8:30 and then Ryan open.ppt. And this is a naming scheme. This all plays into, executing a smooth show. Is when a presenter gives me their PowerPoint, I'll rename it. So in this case, the PowerPoint was called Ryan open.ppt. I will put in the day and the time, and I'll append it that way. And when you have all your files together, this just makes it really easy for your graphics operator to know what to do. There's a column for audio. This tells me that graphics 3, that there's audio in that PowerPoint, so we need to remember to call a queue to open up graphics 3 audio. Microphones tells me that Ryan is going to be on lavalier number 1. And this goes through, everything is on here. So you kind of get the sequence of who's going to be on stage, what microphone they're going to be on, who they're introducing. If you jump down towards the bottom at 1:15, you'll see the stage setup. Now there's a podium plus 2 chairs, and then you'll see after that section, there's we're removing those chairs. So again, everybody will do this a little bit differently, and even my own run of shows will look a little different. But this is a significant key in making sure that you have everything in order and everybody knows what they're doing and they're all on the same page. So I have a run of show, but then sometimes I'll have a production script. Depending on what the session is, a production script to me is any time that there's a real lockdown script, whether it's in teleprompter or whether it's just a scripted production. And this could be something that's a little more theatrical. This could be an awards gala. And in this case, the example I'm going to show you is an awards gala. So here's an example of the script. And, Yeah, I've been called a little extreme or crazy here, uh, but that's okay. So what I'll do is I'll take the script once it's written, and I'll create 2 columns in a document. The script goes to the right column, and all of my production notes go in the left column here. And this happens from the very beginning. You'll see I start with the room fill music on the left side, and then I've got the side screens are going to have a logo loop. There was a center screen that's going to have an awards loop. And then it goes through, and it goes through camera cues and so on. Now, what I do is I go to the extreme, and this has been very helpful to my staff, is because it's not that I'm looking to kill more trees than I need to, but I will print these in color, and as you can see, I'll color code the type of cue it is. So if it's a yellow cue, it's an audio cue. And when I hand these out, I tell my audio guy, and those are the ones he needs to be prepared for and pay special attention to. If it's a green cue, it's a video, or it's a graphics or video cue, which means my video engineer, my graphics operator, they need to be on the same page looking for those cues. In this case, the purple is a camera cue, which means my technical director to call the cameras and the camera operators need to know what they're doing and when they're doing it. And this is, and you can put lighting cues in here and so on. But these types of things and preparations, and I'll be honest with you, it never looks like this. This script will never look like this at the time that they're going to actually start the show. Because things are crossed out, it's handwritten during rehearsals, they get scribbled, never get to print a clean copy, but it's okay because you've got a starting point. So it's all good from that standpoint. All right, so I mentioned speaker timer. So you want to have a speaker timer. There's no question about it. The amount of money it adds, which is not a lot to your production, and you're going to want to have a speaker timer which will sit on the foot of the stage. It'll show the presenter, you control it in the back of house, of how long they have, and it'll count down. Now, we all know, depending on the speaker, they can completely ignore it if they choose to. But it's better to have it. If you do have a professional speaker or a more savvy speaker, they're going to appreciate it, they're going to adhere to it and stay to it. The confidence monitor, again, make sure you have it. The amount of money that it's going to cost to add to your production, it'll help you give it that polish. It will allow the presenters to see the what's on the screens, what slide they're up to, and so on. Rather, we've all seen it. The presenter's standing there on a big stage, and they turn and they look to the side. They no longer address the audience, and they start reading their slides. Even if they're going to read their slides, better that they be looking forward and down a little bit to read their slides. So you definitely want to have speaker confidence monitor. And if it's a big stage, let's say it's a stage, I would say over 40 feet or larger, you may want to consider having more than one of them. So as the presenter walks the stage, that they'll be able to go back and forth, walk the stage and see it wherever they are. And you might even add extra monitors to be able to do your speaker notes for PowerPoint, where you might have a dedicated machine that's just going to do the notes. But again, very key to adding to that feeling. And I'm just going to interrupt myself for a second here, because I don't want to forget to mention it. There's something about a polished production that the audience may not even realize. A lot of these little things, except for the fact that that was well done, that there were no pauses, there were no lulls, that nothing, you didn't skip a beat. And when they leave that room, they won't have anything negative to focus on or awkwardness to talk about, and all of this plays into, giving you that polished production. I'm going to talk about panels, just a little key if you're doing a panel in your session. Now, if you're doing a panel from a technical standpoint, we always want to have a panel mic'd up ahead of time, unless you're using tabletop mics, which are the mics that are shown in that picture where they sit there on the table. If they're using lavalier mics or anything else, handhelds, whatever they're using, you want to have them mic'd up ahead of time. Now, what I'll say about the tabletop mics are, if these mics usually are push-to-talk mics, the ones that are up in that picture, you're going to want to have them, they can usually be locked on. You don't want to leave it to your presenters to have to press them. Let your audio engineer control when they actually come on and turn off. But if you are miking them up with, let's say, lavalier mics, you're going to want to add an A2, which is your audio assistant. And your audio assistant is basically going to work with your A1, your audio lead, and they will be on the same page for who's getting mic'd up, who is on what microphone. You won't have to distract your audio engineer. This could be done backstage. This could be done front of house, off in an area off to the side. You'll have them properly stake them, down the presenter's shirt or inside the jacket. If you're having a panel, you're going to want to have an A2. The other thing is you're going to want to make sure if you're having panels or multiple speakers, you're going to want to make sure your microphone count is right. So in other words, if you've got a session going with 3 panelists and you've got 3 panelists coming on right after them, well, you need at least 6 microphones, don't you? And if there's a moderator in between there or somebody introducing it, that's the way you need to look at your run of show to figure out how many microphones you're going to need in there. And then fallback speakers. If you're having a panel, you're going to want to have those little wedge speakers as fallbacks. So the presenters up on stage, the panelists can hear the audience questions, assuming you're going to take questions. Again, not adding a whole lot of money, but significant instead of the panel not being able to hear a question. Backs up versioning and server options. So just quickly, I'm going to talk about this. Everything needs to be backed up. When you get a presentation, make sure you back it up however you're going to back it up. Versioning, I'll talk about that quickly in just a minute. Server options, since we're bringing our own show computers, we actually bring a little mini server, not a big thing, but it automatically, we program it that if I load a presentation on one of my show laptops, it will automatically sync to all of my laptops. I'm sure you've all seen the AV guy, the graphics guy, get a thumb drive last minute, load it on a laptop, pull it out, load it in the next laptop, put it in the next one. So we have a system in place. There are things that you can do to have that all set up to work automatically. Communications, issues, distractions. Just to quickly go through that. Again, you're going to have ClearComm on your show. You're going to want those the headsets that your staff will wear. You're going to want to make sure that you know what's going to happen. I go through 3 things when I'm calling a show, and this is really for your show caller. If it's not you, you're going to want to make sure that they go through the ready cues and the take cues. So if my next cue is ready to go to graphics 2, ready on Voice of God number 3, the next thing they're going to hear on so they know what's coming, is take graphics 2, take Voice of God 3. So you want to make sure that you're very clear in your communications what's going to happen. And if I call a cue early and a presenter goes long, I'll recall that cue, again, that ready cue. And as far as distractions go, this again is for your show caller and your AV crew. It's happened to me. I've had it where a cue is blown, audio didn't sound good, something went a little bit awry, happens. I've had my clients storm up to the control table and say, want an explanation. And quite frankly, I'll ignore them because I would be doing them a disservice if I were to take my headset off and get further distracted. And I'd rather explain to them after the show, what happened and why I ignored them as well. Up next slides, we talked about this a little bit. Think about at the end of the session, I was trying to go kind of chronologically. At the end of the session, if you're going to do what's next on the agenda for when they walk out, and think about what walkout music you're going to have on there. If you're going to do a general session with a backstage entrance, you may want to consider having a stage manager, okay? Because otherwise you're going to leave it to basically, in my case, corporate executives backstage waiting to hear a voice of God cue, knowing when to go out there. So you're going to want a stage manager back there on clear comm with you, giving you that level of confidence. They're ready to go, giving them the cue and making sure everything is good. If you do a backstage entrance, make sure your AV company has cleared a path, that they tape it with white tape in the carpet with arrows of where to go. They tape the steps, and you have some lighting back there as well. If you think about your setting for chairs, panels, and so on, here's a great example. If this is a very large room, if you look at this picture, you see the podium might be great by itself. But if you add in panel chairs, anyone who's seated on the very left side may have an obstructed view from the with the podium in a way. So you may want to think of the sight lines and where you're going to put the podium, or maybe you strike the podium for a session. As far as multi-screen shows and storyboarding, this kind of goes with the run of show. But just as an example, if it's a 3-screen show, 4-screen show, 5-screen show, you're going to want to create, whether you hand draw them or not, an outline for what happens in every screen whenever there's a screen transition, because some screens may change, other screens may stay the same. So if it's a multi-screen show, you're going to want to put it through a storyboarding process to make sure everything's accounted for. Here's an example. This is an 83-foot screen. Here you've got IMAG in those 2 windows. You'll notice in the middle, this is an awards gala. You've got a winner logo in the middle there with the IMAG on the right side, and you've got the event logo kind of in there. But on the category introduction screen, there was an IMAG, so it may be completely different sources or images. You want to storyboard it out. And the last thing I'm just going to go through very quickly here, I mentioned meeting leader, but this is the thing. You don't need to use meeting leader to do this. Come up with your own process, but make sure you have a process. Meeting leader, one of the things it does is it emails your presenters. It lets them know, thank you for agreeing to speak at the event. And what's going to happen is you'll ask them a series of questions. We'll ask them and force them to answer when they upload their PowerPoint. Does it have audio? Does it have video? Does it require an internet link? And that will let you know what your needs are and what you're going to need in terms of maybe you didn't have audio in that room, or maybe you didn't realize you needed internet in that room. It also will tell them, your meeting planner puts an agenda and tells them what the aspect ratio of the screen is in that room. This is something that we always struggle with. It tells them, in this case, their aspect ratio is 16 by 9. It asks them to choose with their aspect ratio. And then if they tell it that it's the wrong aspect ratio, it will show them graphically, you're going to have these black lines on the screen. If it's right, it gives them a check mark. But then the last thing that we'll do, also ask them about their request. It's not in stone that it's going to do this, but what their request for audiovisual is, number of microphones. Will they be taking questions and answers? How do they wish to be introduced? And these are all things, again, that need to be discussed and so on. Now, the other thing that Meeting Leader will do automatically is they upload the PowerPoint. It will automatically add in, I talked about the versioning and so on, it'll add in the day, the time. So the file name will become, if the file name is presentation.ppt, it'll become Tuesday, _ 8:30, _ room name, _ A, V, or I for audio, video, or internet. So when the graphics operator sees it, they know what it is. And then it'll be PowerPoint.ppt, and then it'll put a time and date stamp. So if there's updates to it, you'll also realize and know that which is the newer version. But again, you could come up with your own process for versioning and so on, but you could use this as well as an option. So I realize I've used pretty much most of all of the time here. But if anyone has a question, I don't see any right at this moment. You could feel free to, reach out to me afterwards. Otherwise, Haley, I would turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you so much for speaking for us today. We really appreciate it, and thank you for all the insights that you've given us. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. We really appreciate it. You can learn about Connect's past and upcoming webinars listed on your screen now. For those of you watching live today, like I said, you will receive an email with your certificate of attendance for the session tomorrow. Again, if you are watching on demand, that's any of you watching past May 30th, please email me directly for your certificate of attendance because it will not come to you automatically. My email is on the screen. It's hpanagakis@connectmeetings.com. And if you have any questions, please email me at that same email. We hope you all will join us again on June 22nd at 1 p.m. Eastern for Design Thinking Your Way into the Best Conference Experiences with Keith Chamberlain and Garth Jordan. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you have a great day.